Morning, everybody. I want to welcome everybody to the August 13, 2019 Board of Commissioners meeting. And today, we're very blessed to have Pastor Tim Wren from the Christ Lutheran Church lead us on our invocation, and our pledge to be led by Deputy Frank Cleveland. So those who are willing and able, please stand.
Good morning, everyone. Let us take a moment in reflection before our God. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks on this day. We give you thanks for the ability to be here in this place. We give you thanks for the ways in which you have continued to bless us and lead us and guide us. Lord, we pray on this day that you send your Holy Spirit to be amongst us, to inspire us, to empower us, to equip us, so that we may live out your will, to care for those who are on the margins, to lift up those who are in need, to continue to look out for all folks. Lord, bless these commissioners, this time that we have together. Bless it with fruit that will prosper. Lord, all this we lift up to you in your most holy and heavenly name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me for the pledge.
I pledge
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Deputy. Okay, we have no presentations this morning. Really? Seriously? Keep moving while I can here. Public comment. Yeah, I know.
That was quick. You have 5 speakers. The first is David Birkenbein.
Okay. Morning, David. Well, we'll take our blessings where we can find them, right?
David Birkenbein, outdoor burning from Mapleton. I didn't know which way to go with this. I mean, I got this paper and I got this up here, and I guess I'm going to stay true to my word. I'm going to focus. I'm going to focus on the law. I'm going to be persistent on the law, and I'm going to do it in courage. Article 7 tells you what it's intended to do. It can't be no plainer than that. The applicability, when you read through all the jargon, even after you go through the state and the EPD, everything, the code is controlling. It's the law. It's the law. None of that other stuff matters because our code is stringent enough for the Georgia Forestry Commission not to have us under the same rule that it does the rest of Georgia as far as outdoor burning. Other counties, you can't even hand pile, they call it hand pile, without a permit. And also, the Forestry Commission tells you, you light that fire, you're responsible for the smoke. But we're not under this. We're under this right here, the stringent codes as far as I'm concerned. Definitions, exceptions to outdoor burning. What is that how's that supposed to improve us? Why is that a positive for us right there? It tells you you could do it. It doesn't say that, you're not going to be held accountable, but yet we treat this right here as it's the rule of law because it wipes everything else out, because we quote 54-113 so many times. Burning prohibitions. Burning prohibitions. It tells you what it's intended to promote. 54-113 didn't promote nothing but chaos, bias, confusion, and turmoil. That's all it is accomplishing. And then penalties. If you violate any section after you don't get the permits for outdoor burning for doing construction or whatever, or you violate section 54-113. Well, how are we going to violate 54-113? You ain't, because it's not being enforced. And 54-114, you ain't, because it's not being enforced, even if you call. And it includes a violation of any total burn ban enacted by the fire chief. What are these? Are these just words? We cannot change the law by the will. Oh, I get frustrated sometimes. We can't change the law by the dictates of the collective will. Dictates of the collective will ruin you. And again, codes. Grass. Grass is too tall. What are they going to do? Your penalty is, once a notice of violation has been served, you have X amount of days. And if you don't broke X amount of days, you're going to go in front of a magistrate court. You're going to be fined. But we have a courtesy notice. But we have no notice for outdoor burning. We have no notice for how we're supposed to burn. And I think the letter that I sent to you last, in your newsletter, if you support the law, then you ought to educate the community in your newsletter and tell them how to burn, because they don't know how to burn. They don't know the rules. Sometimes people in government don't know the rules, because I was told one time, you can't hide the letter of the law. You have to inform the people. And I think we ought to take that into consideration and inform the people, since we can't hide the letter of the law. But we sure don't have a problem of not enforcing it. We sure don't have a problem of dictating what the law doesn't state. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Birkenbein.
The next speaker is Reverend Coakley Pendergrass.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Coakley Pendergrass. I'm Associate Minister at Turner Chapel. I chair two nonprofits, one the Georgia Community Coalition, and the other is Cobb Faith Partnership. I'm here this morning to speak to you about the South Cobb area. 15 years ago, we recognized that there was going to come a time where there is going to be investments in the South Cobb area. There was a time where the elected officials were just running to be, and they would come to our groups for support, but they really were not doing anything in the South Cobb area. With the exception of when Commissioner Cupid came in, what we are asking for now is this. The community has to be considered in the development of the South Cobb area. Now, we have folks that are posted in that South Cobb Redevelopment Authority. They've segued themselves into a position where they're doing what they want to do. There's no, it's not transparent. The community has to be a part of it. You can't just come in and just sort of just do what you want to do. Now, we're talking about elected officials, the Board of Commissioners, we're talking about state reps, the senators. There has to be a consideration. There has to be an opening. There has to be a position where the community can be a part of. Now, I go back to when the Atlanta Regional Commission was in Mapleton, And they were implementing a plan where they were trying to develop a program for the seniors, a senior center. And so we're talking about 15 years ago. When we the community, that you're functioning for the community. You speak for the community. Well, we are the community. And the community has to have some sort of way to have dialogue other than when you're trying to get elected and you come and listen to us. But then you have your town halls. But your agenda is already set. You made your relationships. You're doing what needs to be done on our behalf. Well, we're saying, let us have some input on our behalf. Really consider us. Let us be a voice. This issue, it has to be. It doesn't have to be a situation where there's a conflict, where it's adversarial. But we know that money is going to be spent at some point in time in the South Cobb area. If you're developing for us, consider us, and where our focus is to be at the table. Now, the Georgia Community Coalition was started about 15 years ago with the late Michael Dorsey, Kenneth Howell, and then part of our support group was Sharon Hill. We're talking about the community. Dr. Ben Williams was part of that advisory group when we were starting this organization. I meet with almost all of the other nonprofit organizations that are in the South Cobb area. So I'm not just speaking for myself. I'm saying consider us. Consider us. Don't just work for us. Okay? And there's an old adage, if you're not at the table when decisions are made, then you're on the menu. Okay? And that's what we're asking for, is that we want to be at the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Coakley.
Reverend Pendergrass? Yes, I just want to share that, my door is always open to you, and it's open to the community. Every month, we have a community zoning meeting because we want people to be at the table. So when people are coming in for development, the planning commissioner and myself, we meet with them every fourth Wednesday at the South Cobb Community Center. So I just encourage you to know that venue is open. In addition to, there's several community meetings that we do have because we try to make sure that the community is incorporated as we're making decisions. And so I can assure you, at least on our behalf, we don't try to set an agenda without being inclusive, and I just encourage you to take advantage of some of those opportunities.
I appreciate that, Commissioner, and you know that I've been at your meetings. So I'm aware
Not
of
at those meetings, you haven't been. And that's what we specifically talk about development, because it's very important. It's very important to us to make sure that the community's voice is considered.
Again, I'm going back to my point. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your response. But the community insists. They insist that they be considered. Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Larry Gore.
Can you put this up? And how do we work that where I get the flicker of that? I'm going to share this first, this second, this third, this fourth. Hi. I feel like we've been on the menu for a long time. I'm Larry Gore from Powder Springs, Georgia. Sorry, I couldn't last through the last meeting you guys had. That was a doozy. I knew you wouldn't be listening to me when that thing got over with. But sometimes because of time constraints, I do these things backwards. I'm a little dyslexic. You know, figured that out, I guess. But anyway, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for working for us. We know it's not easy. We've seen enough of that to know it's not easy. But Mike, you and Lisa, one of you are going to be here in the future. So I have a couple of questions. When will community development enforce our stream bank buffer codes? And if never, why not? And I'm an owner and I've requested inspections more than once. And question number 2 is, has community development invoked any part of Cobb County Code 11055? Of great interest is the part about withholding all permits, and if not, why not, and when do you intend to begin? If you could, one of you guys could just give me an answer to that, I would appreciate that. Now I'll go into the thing. In addition to my annotated grievance, please accept my oral remarks as part of these grievances, ongoing since 10/10/2017. I reserve the right to revise and amend same. I believe this is the 9th installment if you have not deleted any. Invoke all sections of Cobb County Code 11055, Maintenance Division 1, generally Article 3, subdivision design standard and required improvements. Copy is attached. Due to Cobb County Community Development's extreme lethargy and demonstrated incompetence, we again petition to you the right thing, to do the right thing. Retrofit the dam at Covenant Place. It benefits Powder Springs, Austell, and Mapleton. That's a list of the money that the federal government had to spend in these communities to try to put these people's lives back together after floods in 2009 and later. There's another side to that. It's almost $12 million in damages that a lot of could be avoided. This is the single most economical project to help secure the future for some of the most at-risk disadvantaged citizens in our county. Please rescind Covenant Place common community property that includes the lake, the dam, and green space behind the dam. Revoke all subdivision-related bonds and complete our development consistent with the annotated description of Covenant Place as defined by Cobb County Code 134-198.2, grandfather 2004 Z104. The buffer, the primary and secondary conservation area will remain as part of Covenant Place subdivision, and an agreement to develop and maintain nature trails in the primary and secondary conservation area within 2 years after the agreement, paid for by the HOA. Of paramount importance for each homeowner will be to be provided equal access to all amenities, including ADA boat launch and trail use. I recommend remediation of the stream bank buffer with a combination of water oak, loblolly pines, ginseng, muscadine, and other low-growing indigenous plant species, and no grasses. I'm about through, folks. This is a section, it's the second page of your code governing standards for your subdivisions. And one of the questions I'm asked, has any of this been done? Has anybody in the county and community development, has anybody started this process? It's been going on a long time. So with that, thank you.
My only question to you is, have you
Yes,
talked personally with your district commissioner about this issue?
We have talked about
Okay.
this.
All right, I just want to make sure, that's all.
We have, and I'm just asking for answers now.
Okay.
I've been giving information the best I could get it, trying to keep lawyers out of everything. Everybody knows about that. But anyway,
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Larry, can we get a copy of your comments?
Yes, ma'am, I
Thank
do,
you.
I give these every time. This is
All right.
for the record. Sure do. You don't need that, but that's, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be happy to provide copies, if you need them, additional copies. Thank you.
The next speaker is Michael Ray.
My name is Michael Ray. I live in Powder Springs. I live at Covenant Place, the same community where Mr. Gore lives. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to the commission today and ask God to bless each and one of you. I need some help here from the gentleman to put these various pictures up of violations of our code, which I want to speak about briefly this morning. Again, my name is Michael Ray. I have been a resident of Covenant Place in Powder Springs. I live at 2594 Restoration Drive since September of 2015. It's sad to say that our present HOA and our past two presidents and their management teams are absolutely corrupt to the core, and that is an understatement. They will not enforce any of our covenants and are violators themselves. And our covenants, Article 7, Section 2 of the covenant states that no resident can run a business or trade out of their homes. The residents of 2623 Restoration Drive run an automotive, motorcycle, and lawnmower repair business out of their home. The residents of 5198 Olive Branch Circle run a carpet installation company out of their home. The resident of 5162 Olive Branch Circle has run a heavy-duty construction business and other business out of his home. The HOA is well aware of these violations, yet they will do nothing to enforce our covenant rules and regulations. We, the honest, law-abiding residents of Covenant Place, ask the commission to authorize the Cobb County Code Enforcement Agency to shut down these home businesses permanently. There is precedent for this. Again, the HOA of Covenant Place, the current president and officers, as well as past HOA presidents and officers, have allowed this violation of our covenants to continue for 4+ years now, even before I moved in. They have no intention of enforcing the rules. My photos here and many others that I didn't bring today will show all home business violations of our covenants. The resident of 5162 Olive Branch Circle was issued 3 citations for operating a business out of his home by Ms. Falston, who used to work in code enforcement. After 3 citations were given, Cobb County Sheriff went out and issued summons to this individual. He failed to appear in court, and then a warrant was issued for his arrest, which is, excuse me, thought I had it up here with me. Maybe I gave it to him in that section there to show that. Let's see. Oh, here it is, right here. Right down here where it issued a warrant for his arrest for a violation of code enforcement. Because since the HOA wouldn't enforce our rules, we had to go to code enforcement. And also, this gentleman right here, he's not with him anymore, Mr. Paco, he came out and issued some citations before he left code enforcement. So we do have precedent of you intervening on our behalf. Basically, we asked, please help us, the honest, law-abiding citizens of Covenant Place. Since our HOA refuses to enforce our covenants and home-based businesses, due to this crisis, many residents are putting their homes up for sale and our property values are declining. Also, is an addendum not concerning the HOA and their refusal to enforce our covenants. I have called 911 many times and reported about the situation we have. We live on Moon Road, and on one end of Moon Road is Old Lost Mountain, on the other end is Florence Road. And I've made complaints to Ms. Cupid about a traffic light being on Florence Road. We are basically trapped on Moon Road, all the subdivisions in there, because of all the growth and other buildings and construction and homes that are being built in that area. We need a traffic light at Powder Springs at Moon Road and Old Lost Mountain Road. Sometimes I go up there and it takes me 10 minutes for the traffic to clear out so I can turn left or right. I've seen many people go through that intersection many times, and just accidents just almost happened because they get frustrated. And there's a development being built right there for senior citizens. I don't know how many homes it's going to be, but it's going to be a lot, and it's going to only add to congestion. And we're getting in there and we're getting trapped, and he can't even get out of our own subdivision hardly. Also, at the other end of Moon Road, we need a traffic light on Florence Road. Now, that's a very dangerous place there because overgrowth of trees and everything, when cars come there, speed limit is 35 miles an hour. But people will come through there doing 50 and 55. When you try to turn left, it's very difficult. You have to get into the lane to turn left. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people almost have accidents. It's,
Mr. Ray?
yes.
Appreciate your time today. I'm sure you've been working this with your commissioner.
Yes, sir.
And I think our representative from DOT is here. I've heard also other issues about Moon Road, and forwarded an email to Chief Cox about doing a traffic study, to bring STEM out there to look at the speeders on that road. So
Yes.
slowly but surely, we'll make a small difference, but I appreciate you making those comments, and make sure that you continue to work with your commissioner and send us emails. Those emails really help, because that way, with that information, we can send directly to public safety or to code enforcement, and that leads to something that we can sink our teeth into to get moving on.
All right. Well,
Okay.
I do appreciate your time.
All right,
Thank
and
you so
welcome,
very
and
much.
thank you for your service, and welcome home.
Well, thank you. I was in the Mekong Delta. I think you were in Vietnam, right?
No, I was not, but some days up here, I feel like I was.
I was in the Navy and Naval Reserve. I was in the Mekong Delta and on the gunboat in 69 and 70 up in what's called groundwater Navy.
Right.
So, but thank you for telling me welcome home. When I got back, it wasn't too much welcome in San Francisco.
Well, we welcome you now, and you're always.
Thank you very much.
We're glad you're here in Cobb County.
God bless all of you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. And again, send us those emails. I mean that sincerely.
Okay, thank you, sir.
The next speaker is Dr. Ben Williams.
Good morning.
Morning, Dr. Williams.
Ben Williams, President of the Cobb County Chapter of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I would like to speak with the board about the South Cobb Redevelopment Authority. I was in the room along with a number of others on the night in which a decision was made to set into South Cobb an entity called the South Cobb Development Authority. And if I recall, against the opposition of Commissioner Cupid, which was ignored, and it was planted there. I also was in the room and out in the community when considerable amount of discussion, consternation around the demolition of Magnolia Crossing, although I agree that the conditions of the building was in such that it should have been and was demolished. But I also witnessed what appeared to be insufficient planning for what would happen to those who were affected by that particular action. Over time, I've continued to watch that entity. I watched it when action was taken in the legislature to morph it from being a 5-member entity to 7 members, and laying out its authority and responsibilities. I'm here this morning because as I reviewed the legislation, it is clear to me that the Board of Commissioners, by law, are designated as the appointing authority for that entity. And Colonel, you know very well that you can delegate responsibility, but you are never ever free of being responsible. This entity in the law has been identified as having the authority to appoint members of that board. It is reasonable for me, based on my observations, information gathered, that it has been far, far away from being what I would consider to be a functional board with a real interest in one of its primary target community, and that is the Six Flags Drive community. Right now, terms have expired. Meetings that I've attended, there has really been a robust attendance, and not much has materialized, either because of disinterest, neglect, or politics. I am calling on this board to be mindful of the pastor's message this morning. God bless marginalized people. And those people are marginalized. You've been down there with me, Chairman. We have met with those people. Many of them are decent people who are simply just fighting, if you will, for an opportunity to have a decent place to live. There is a project that is in waiting, and it will not be attended to as long as we do not have a board that has a vested interest in that community, and it demonstrates it. So what I'm asking this board to do is to step up, grab hold of its legal responsibility, bring before it projects that are there, and begin some kind of deliberative process to address those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams.
You've had two additional individuals sign up. Would you like to hear them at this time?
Okay.
Okay, the next speaker will be Sheila Edwards.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Sheila Edwards, and I'm a homeowner and community advocate in the Mableton area of South Cobb. I've come to speak to you about styrogenics, but before I do, I want to lend my voice to the voices that have already spoken about Magnolia Crossing. These 50 acres of prime real estate property remains undeveloped after 5 years with no hope of development in its future. I've seen the media stories, sometimes on the front page, top of the fold, or breaking news on the evening news shows about Fort Mac and their failure to develop certain parcels of land on their property. And I wonder why our community doesn't get the same coverage. I have written to the newspapers, I've written to the TV stations, and I've sent emails to you guys asking you to lend your voices to this situation. And I urge you, again, to look at our community and figure out why we can't develop 50 acres of prime real estate that's sitting there waiting to be developed. After 5 years, we should be looking to do something different, and it can't be just business as usual. I want to add my voice to the growing voices of the outrage from the citizens that reside directly near the plant called Styrogenics. As a result of newly discovered information, we're learning that this is they're emitting cancer-causing agents into our air. This has been contaminating our air for a number of years. The years are unknown, and at this point, we have to understand that whatever goes into the air comes back down to the ground. So we have to look at our water system. We have to look at the Chattahoochee. We have to look at all of this and be responsive to the people that are enduring this situation. In both of these situations, Magnolia Crossing and the communities around Styrogenics, you have the power to bring about change directly or indirectly. I urge you to use your power for the good of the community. I urge you not to get bogged down in the weeds and see the ultimate goal, which is the quality of life for families, children, and seniors. You have the power literally and figuratively. You have the power to have discussions with the people who have direct power or oversight. You, as the Cobb County Commission, should have an opinion on everything that happens within the boundaries of Cobb County. I urge you to use that power to bring about the development of Magnolia Crossing and to protect our community from the direct hit that we will take as a result of Styrogenics. Several years ago, me and my community were faced with a similar situation. We discovered that a waste transfer station was operating 150 feet from our home, a few feet from the Chattahoochee River, and direct location to the Charlie Brown Airport. When I first was told about that situation, and I was told it was a done deal, was nothing that we could do about it because the board was going to vote and the board was going to approve it. And that's when I decided to use my skill sets in local, state, and federal government to fight this situation. And I was one of 2 people that showed up the day that this was supposed to be voted on, and it got postponed. But by the time you all decided to vote, I was one of 50 because I activated my community. I knocked on doors. I held meetings. I did everything to bring about awareness to my community that this was going on. And I stand here today to let the folks of near Styrogenics know that I plan to lend my support to them as well. And most astonishing for me is that these folks within that immediate radius, I'm not a part of that because that circle goes all the way to my community. So I'm directly impacted by that situation. So again, I urge you all not to get bogged down in the weeds, not to try to figure out who gets credit for what, who gets to speak, who gets to decide whatever. Again, you're the Cobb County Commission and you have a voice on everything that happens in our community. And we're no longer willing to accept the situation where somebody says that's not in my district or that's not my concern. It's the concern of all yours. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Monica Delancey.
Good morning, Monica Delancey, Riverside Community. Just want to let you know that schools are back in. We started in Cobb County School District on August the 1st. We have new principals at Pembroke High School, Dr. Dana Giles, and at South Cobb High School, Mr. Thomas J. Perry. There's so much growth in the South Cobb area that Campbell High School in Smyrna has 3,000 students enrolled, which is now the largest high school for Cobb County. Also want to thank you for your continued support, Mr. Boyce, Chairman Boyce, for coming down to the Riverside community, as well as making sure that the properties are doing what they say they're going to be doing and continue to do. And also I want to thank Mrs. Cupid, Commissioner Cupid, for coming out and playing kickball with us at our National Night Out event on August the 4th. And believe it or not, I received calls, I think from, the police department kept saying, all we're gonna do is play kickball. And I said, yes, that's what we're gonna do is play kickball. And we had a nice amount of people that came out, children, adults. And Chief Cox told me last night that one of the players, I didn't know because I was so busy running around, but one of the players who wanted to play was legally blind. And I didn't know that, and he took time to make sure that the young person was able to run the bases. So I think like he was able to let me know about that. But also I want to speak about housing. Um, a single person that's making $10 an hour, $15 an hour, has challenges of meeting rent. When you have one bedroom starting at $700, and that's a single person. So if you can imagine someone that has children that's making $15, $10 an hour, what a challenge that is. You heard from police department, the fire department, about a month ago, that the challenge they were having on their salaries, right? And teachers, I know teachers that teach in the South Cobb area, they're traveling an hour to get to work, okay? Because they have to make sure they live somewhere that is manageable for their income as well. So it's not only, this housing and rent is not only a concern for residents who's making $10 and $15 an hour, it's a concern for working families. It's a concern that there needs to be a task force put in place, because if you're gonna have jobs that's here in Cobb County that's paying that. And I'm talking about, your entry-level workers at Wellstar, your entry-level workers for Cobb County School District, all of those warehouses in the South Cobb area. If they're paying $10 and $15 an hour, we're gonna have to make sure they have a place to live. And we cannot just say they're gonna have to do what they're gonna be able to do. No, because what you have is people that are being squeezed into 2 bedrooms with 1 bath, into older apartments, and that's causing such an infrastructure. Yes, there's gonna be leaks. Yes, there's gonna be a lot of repairs have to be done when you're squeezing in 6 people in 2 bedrooms, right? So that's why we're gonna have to be intentional of what we're gonna do to address this housing, to address what's going on with this rent. We're gonna have to make it our duty as we turn into 2020, because growth is in the South Cobb area. But because Cobb County is a great place to live, but it's gotta be a great place to live for everyone, regardless of their income. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Delancey. Okay, let's get into, thank you for all those comments. It's always great to have people come here and address the board, keep us informed and also on our feet. Let's go to the consent agenda and a couple of admin notes as we scroll through them. Following consent agenda, number 12 and number 24 have been withdrawn from the consent agenda. And then we've had some revisions to consent agenda number 2 and number 3. And number 16.
Excuse me, Chairman or Manager Jose, what provisions were made tonight?
Number 3.
All that we asked for that was they identify who left their prices the same and who raised them. And it's in the text right before the bold, that Wade Coots.
There was only one of the vendors that raised
Oh,
their
okay,
prices.
I didn't
Commissioner
realize
Cupid.
that.
It was-
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I move to approve the consent agenda as revised.
Second.
Any discussion? Call a question. Passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, before we get into the regular agenda, regular item number 52 has been withdrawn until a later date. All right, so with that, let's see here. Number 33. Commissioner, have the county manager will lead us in discussion on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, sir. I am presenting this agenda item on behalf of Commissioners Cupid and Ott, and it is to request that the board retain an appropriate expert, and this will be in cooperation with the city of Smyrna, to consult and evaluate any potential health issues for testing and modeling related to potential ethylene oxide emissions. This is relative to some of the comments that the board has received this morning. During public comment, just by way of very brief background, Mr. Chairman, it has been determined that there is a business operating in unincorporated Cobb County that may be exceeding the limits for emissions, specifically for ethylene oxide. We've been notified by such through the EPD as well as the EPA. We are proposing jointly with Smyrna that we discuss strategies to address the issues proactively. I believe Commissioners Ott and Cupid have been involved in previous community meetings with the city of Smyrna. We have received a proposal from an outside firm that we are recommending that the board consider entering into. This would allow for both Smyrna, Cobb County, and potentially the city of Atlanta to have this appropriate expert provide testing and modeling services, as well as provide some consulting assistance to all parties involved as to how to move forward with a task force that would also work in conjunction with an advisory committee that would be composed of elected officials and members of the business as well as the government community. The particular firm that has provided that proposal is the GHD company, specifically doing business as GHD Environmental and Consulting, Inc. We are recommending that the board consider retaining GHD in conjunction with the city of Smyrna at a cost not to exceed $39,600 to be included in a contract document that would be reviewed and approved by the county attorney prior to signature by the chair. We are also proposing that these funds be taken from the Board of Commissioners undesignated contingency fund, sir. And there are adequate funds in that account for this activity.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Since this plan is in Commissioner Ott's district, I'll let him make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I make the motion, I just want to kind of highlight some of the things that Rob talked about. I know that this has been a very tumultuous couple weeks for the community. This information kind of came out late, and it's one of the reasons why there's a community meeting coming up next Monday to kind of get a lot of the information that Commissioner Cupid and I had the opportunity to hear from EPA and EPD, because I think that it's important for that information to get out there. This plan, or this proposal, is a one-time test. I know that there was some concern by folks about spending county money. This is what contingency money is all about. But more importantly, this is a one-time test. And in a lot of ways, what it's designed to do is to let the community in the county and the city of Smyrna and potentially the city of Atlanta know whether or not what we were being told by EPD and the EPA, whether or not those numbers are correct. And one of the reasons that this firm was asked to submit a proposal, it's the same firm that did the testing in Illinois. There's been a lot of discussion by the folks that have become involved in this, that they want to make sure that what is going on in Illinois, which is a different situation, same company, same chemical, but some very different numbers. So we thought that it was important to pick the same company so that there was less variation in what goes on down here. The costs, we asked the company to provide two proposals, one being the city of Smyrna and the county working together. The second proposal being if the city of Atlanta wanted to participate. And the way this is written is basically the county and the city are splitting the cost that was brought in the proposal. And I know the county manager has been in discussion with the city council person that represents this area in Atlanta. And what we've told them is that if they would like to participate, their cost would be the difference between the proposal for the city of Smyrna and the county, and then the proposal that includes all three. We're waiting to hear back from them. I know the city of Smyrna is set to vote on this on Monday, and then they'll come to the meeting afterwards. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the retention of the firm to do the testing in cooperation with the city of Smyrna and potentially the city of Atlanta, not with a cost not to exceed $39,600.
Mr. Cupid?
I second Commissioner Ott's motion and appreciate the board being responsive to this concern, which has caused a lot of frustration amongst residents in that surrounding area. And I think this allows us to be responsive to not only follow up with the EPA and EPD on their testing, but to take it a step further and test the air around the site. And I believe in communication with Commissioner Ott that EPD will be testing the emissions from the equipment that's at the site, at the stack, but this is actually testing the ambient air to see what could be traveling out to communities. And I think it'll give us a more robust reflection of what residents could be susceptible to.
And I think it's also important to note that that the company Sterigenics has already received approval or necessary permits from EPD to further enhance the scrubbing technologies that they have on the plant that will lower the emissions from the plant. But like I said, part of the reason for doing this test is to make sure from the community standpoint and the commission and the cities that what numbers are coming out of EPD match with what this air samples show.
Mr. Burrow?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank Commissioner Ott and Cupid and the city of Smyrna for taking the lead on this. Even though this is regulated by the state, sometimes you have to go above and beyond to protect your citizens. And as I said yesterday, if this were in my district, I would want the support of the other commissioners to move forward on this, and that's why I'm supporting this, and I think it's the right thing to do.
Commissioner Gamble?
Okay, well, I agree that this is the right thing to do, and as Commissioner Ott mentioned, you know, this is what contingency is there to be used for. County Manager Rob Hozak, I know I asked you before, do we have a policy on how we regulate this type of spending? And from my lack of answer, I'm assuming we don't. So I would like to see the county bring forth a policy for the board to consider as far as spending of contingency funds and the responsibility of the board when it comes to other federal agencies, regulations, and our roles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Where to begin? I was sitting on a balcony yesterday talking with my son-in-law, who's a journalist. And he says the number one mistake that people make with media is they try to hide something. Because once you do that, then the suspicion is, what else are you hiding? And I don't know what led the EPA or the EPD to do what it did, but clearly they have a lot to answer for. Because here's the issue for me. My father was 43 years old and he was medevaced out of Vietnam with cancer. Now, I don't know that his time there was a direct result to Agent Orange. But I find it interesting that a man who was 43 years old, that was in World War II, the Korean War, and then Vietnam, never got to enjoy the benefits of his labor to his country. And I see this same circumstance for all these people that lived under the emissions of this plant for all this time. And I think Sterigenics has done the right thing. They tried to reduce these emissions, and I commend them for it. But the bottom line is, we don't know what impact these emissions had on the people underneath, the emissions that came out of their stack. And we may not know that for a long time. So what cost is it to you as a parent? What cost is it to you as a husband or a wife or a grandmother to know that you might have been living under a cloud of cancerous emissions of some kind, and you may not know for a long time whether or not this had any impact on your life? So, as Tip O'Neill said, politics is local. This is as local as it gets. The people of Cobb County are looking for us to step up to the plate. This has been dropped in our lap. And I commend the representatives like Eric Allen and others that tried to get this out there and get this information out to the public. Commend the members of this board speaking out. But the bottom line is that we're the ones that are going to have to produce some money for this. And that's what this contingency is all about. And I can't predict the future, but I do know that there's a lot of unknowns, which is why we have this contingency fund. So I look forward to what EPA and EPD is going to say next Monday. The county has stepped up by offering up the Civic Center because we know there's going to be lots of people involved in this issue. The power of social media was demonstrated by this issue. And I think that we need to be part of the answer. It has to be a collaborative effort, and I really commend everybody on this board and also the delegation for doing just that. I think this speaks to what people expect out of the government. And while this may not be our finest hour, it certainly is one of those. I think as we get out there and try to reassure the people as best that we can, that we truly have their best interests at heart. Because for all we know, our friends may be impacted with this and perhaps some members of our extended family. So that, I call the question. It passes 5-0. All right, on to other marked regular agenda, transportation.
Yes, sir. Good morning. We have 5 items for consideration this morning. The first item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Accelera Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $573,500 for repairs on Silver Comet Trail bridges.
Commissioner Cupid.
So moved.
Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Our second item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Accelera Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $648,700 for Gordon Combs road sidewalks.
Commissioner Gamble.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Accelera Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $623,400 for operational improvements on Factory Shoals Road, the Harmony, Leland, and Clay Elementary Schools, Phase 2.
Commissioner Cupid.
Yes, second. And just for clarification,
You gotta make
Erica.
the motion
I'm sorry,
first.
I'm sorry. Boy, I'm seconding my own motion before I made the motion. So moved. Thank you. Following the second, just a question. These SPOS funds, are these Cobb County SPOS funds or school SPOS
No,
funds?
ma'am, these are Cobb County SPOS funds. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Yep. Motion still stands.
Okay, call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Accelera Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $117,800 for drainage system repairs on Pedro Drive.
Commissioner Cupid.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Lawson Enterprises LLC in an amount not to exceed $2,757,930.75 for roadway improvements on Cherokee Street.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve. And a question.
Sure.
This is also partnership with the City of Kennesaw, it's a joint project.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Call the
And
question.
they have been notified. And they have been notified.
Okay. Now I call the question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item for consideration is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a contract with Chef Construction LLC in an amount not to exceed $537,156.40 for Big Shanty Road sidewalk.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve with pleasure.
Any discussion? Call the question.
Big Shanty.
Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve change order number 1 to the contract with C.W. Matthews Contracting Company, Inc., a no-cost time extension through December 20th, 2019 for roadway improvements on Sandy Plains Road.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve. No. And just information for the public. This project was delayed because of utility relocation and Atlanta gas light issues. We have been, in my newsletters and in communicating with the public, we have extended the contract till the end of December, and now it's making it official, but
Yes, ma'am.
that has been the communication all along, that it would be finished. This has caused a lot of calls and complaints to the office, and it's been very frustrating
Yes,
with
ma'am.
traffic, and now that school's back in, it's even
Yes,
worse again. So, I don't want to see another extension on this coming back.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Any other discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to request the Board of Commissioners approve change order number 1 to the contract with Lawson Enterprises, a no-cost time extension through September 30th, 2019 for Nichols Road sidewalk.
Commissioner Gamble.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. Our next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve change order number 1 final to the contract with Arcadis US, Inc., a savings to the project in the amount of $252,905.98 for design services on I-75 at Third Army Road interchange.
Commissioner Gamble.
I'm going to say so moved, but I have a question for Erica.
That's fine.
Okay.
You want to second it, Commissioner Cupid?
Second.
Okay.
Erica, I know we had an email for changes. Was it to this agenda item? And if so, why wasn't a pink sheet put forth?
No.
Or is that for a different?
It was for the one that I had sent you comments on, was on Big Shanty. I had given you some incorrect information.
Okay, I thought Third Army was in there too. I'm sorry.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a consultant service agreement with American Engineering, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $579,626.99 for engineering design of Mapleton Parkway pedestrian improvements Phase 2.
Commissioner Cupid.
Yes, so moved. Just comment, it's exciting to see this project move along and for us to also get Phase 2. This is to extend Silver Comet down from Mapleton all the way down to Lee Industrial. And at first, our first phase did not include this portion here. So it's exciting to see this gap being able to be covered with federal dollars.
Okay. Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a preliminary engineering agreement with CSX Transportation, Inc. in an estimated total amount of $15,070 for preliminary engineering of West Atlanta Street Trail.
Commissioner Burrow.
Motion to approve.
Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve supplemental agreement number 3 to the Cobb Framework Agreement with the Town Center Community Improvement District for additional engineering design of South Barrett Parkway Reliever Phase 3. Authorize payment to the Town Center Community Improvement District in the amount not to exceed $82,892.02.
Commissioner Burrow.
Yes, and I'm also, motion to approve, and I'm also glad to see this moving forward.
Okay, any discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners adopt a resolution authorizing submission of Surface Transportation Block Grant and Transportation Alternatives Program Grant request to the Federal Transit Administration in an amount not to exceed $4,100,000 for capital assistance for construction of Mapleton Parkway pedestrian improvements Phase 1. Authorize the acceptance of discretionary Surface Transportation Block Grant and Transportation Alternatives Program Grant funding, and authorize the corresponding budget transactions.
Commissioner Cupid.
So moved.
Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. The next item is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a utility relocation agreement with Georgia Power in the amount not to exceed $126,523 for preliminary engineering and relocation of facilities on New Macklin Road.
Commissioner Cupid.
So moved.
Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. And then the last item for consideration is to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a utility relocation agreement with Georgia Power Company in an amount not to exceed $62,419 for preliminary engineering and relocation of facilities on Woodland Brook Drive over Gilmore Creek.
Commissioner Ott.
Motion to approve, and just to comment for the folks who live in Vinings, I know this is going to be an impactful project when it starts, and the plan right now is to do it next year in 2020 during the summer months, where the traffic won't be quite as heavy. So motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Erica. Now, Public Services.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Manager. Our first item this morning is for the board to approve change order number 1 final to the contract with Hogan Construction Group LLC for the improvements at the Parks Administration Complex under the 2011 and 2016 SPLOST program. All work has been completed with a savings of $85,639.63 to be credited back to both programs. Therefore, we ask the Board of Commissioners to approve the contract revision, authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairman to execute the documents.
Commissioner Gamble.
Actually, can you clear my vote, please?
Turn around.
I hit the vote instead of the,
She hit vote.
Clear the yes vote off the
Clear
board.
the-
There you go.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion to approve, but I have a couple comments.
Sure. You have a second? All right.
Okay, and I was having a conversation with Jimmy Geesey on this. I don't like the fact that we're including the 2011 and 2016 SPLOST in here under one transaction. I would like to see it broken out as separate.
Okay, so you want like separate funding lines that reflect both 11 and 16?
Correct.
Okay, that seems reasonable. Okay. Oh,
So I'm not, like, we had started this discussion yesterday,
Sure.
so, really, I would like to deny this and have it come back in another 2 weeks, having it shown correctly, or is that something we can change right before going
I
forward?
think you can make it a motion, you can make it contingent. Yeah, contingent on the change, all right?
Okay, then I'd like to amend my motion that we would approve this, but to have it amended to read the adjustment to the 2011 SPLOST and then also the 2016 SPLOST accordingly.
Okay, so,
How would we amend that?
yes, ma'am. It's actually in the funding statement, but you want us to move it out of the funding statement into the recommendation?
One of them refers to 2011 and one refers to
Okay.
2016.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, there was I'm sorry.
The confusion comes from, if you, because again, I know we have a lot of people looking at numbers. If you look under the 2011 SPLOST project, you can see where the $4.2 million was there to be spent. the way on the first page on the background, if you look at the background, flip, just kind of lead everybody through. It says change order number 1 is to the 4.2 million, which is only the amount under the 2011 SPLOST. So when you, in 2016, there's another $898,000. Well, that's not reflected here. We're only talking about the 4.2 million, which ties back to 2011. That's where I think a lot of the confusion is coming in when we have folks looking at this from home, trying to figure out where the numbers are coming from and where the money is going. That is what didn't make sense to me on this one, if I look at the background. So while you do have it itemized out on the second page, the first page, the background of where you're making the changes to is confusing.
I think a possible solution would be, and I know that staff did this way because the agenda item is simply about the $85,639. Okay, but I think what Commissioner Gamble is saying is initially what would have happened, and it may be in the original agenda item where the $4.2 million is talked about. But I think just for clarity, what you can do is on the funding, you have the decrease encumbrances. I think you could add a section above it that shows where the money came from, basically breaking down the 4.2 million. You know, just add a section there that shows, and it's really going to be kind of a restatement of what was in the original agenda item when this was first approved.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking
Well, and while I agree with you, but if we're only taking this $85,000 away from the 4.2 million, that only impacted the 2011 SPLOST, not the 2016.
And I think what you're going to see is if you put in where the money came from to pay for it, the 4.2 million is not from one SPLOST, it's from 2. And so what'll happen is you're going to see a line item that'll say increase encumbrances, and it'll be the GAE, whatever the fund is for the 2011 SPLOST. It'll show a dollar amount. Then it'll show that the next one for the 2016 SPLOST. Those two combined will equal the 4.2 million. And so then it'll make sense because you'll show that 61,911 is coming back to the 2011 SPLOST and the 23,728 is going back to the 2016.
Yeah, I think if you just said like the 4.2 million was 2 SPLOST.
Right.
Collected,
But the
so-
4.2 million isn't 2 SPLOST, it's 1.
Just 11.
It's just 11.
We can
It's
withdraw
just
this,
11.
Mr. Chairman, bring it back.
We might want to pull this.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Yeah, she amended it to reflect
I
that.
can amend it again.
Can she withdraw her motion and bring it back?
You can make an amendment to withdraw till later if you want. It's your motion.
Okay, I'd like a second amendment then. I'd like a motion to withdraw this agenda item.
Okay, so do you want a date or just till it's,
You can bring it back in 2 weeks.
okay, ma'am. All right, okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is any other discussion? So I'll call the question. Passes 5-0.
Our next item is for the board to approve a contract with All Star Lighting and Electrical Service Incorporated in amount not to exceed $69,092.67 to add LED lighting to the synthetic turf field at Terrell Mill Park under the 2016 program. We ask the Board of Commissioners to approve the contract, authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and authorize the chairman.
Commissioner Ott.
All right, just before I make a motion, just kind of a note. I mean, I know folks that might have been looking at the agenda item. Originally, it was money coming out of the SPLOST, and that was in error. The agenda item has been changed, that it's still coming from SPLOST, but it's coming from a different place.
Yes, sir.
Because there are 2 areas in SPLOST. One was for the turf field at Terrell Mill Park. The second one was for general park improvements, and so the agenda item was corrected to show that the lighting was coming out of the general park improvements and not the turf field.
Yes, sir.
So motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Our final item this morning is for the board to approve a contract with Complete Demolition Services LLC in amount not to exceed $92,000 for the demolition of a house and outbuildings located on the Felton property under the 2011 Park SPLOST program.
Commissioner Ott.
And just kind of a way of background, this has been around for a long time. The original intent was to repair the roof after hiring consultants to look at the house and the roof and everything else, it was determined that it would be almost $2 million to make the building usable, because it wasn't just a matter of fixing the roof, but in order to use the building, you would have to bring it up to ADA standards and some other county codes. So the decision was made that in the interest of saving taxpayer dollars, that it made more sense to demolish the property. So motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Call the question. Oops, go
Actually, I'll
ahead.
have
Yeah, go ahead.
one comment. And again, while I understand Commissioner Ott's reasoning for doing this, I disagree because, again, when it was put forth in the SPLOST, it was for putting on a roof, not being used to demolish the building. That's
Okay, so that's a comment.
just a
Any
comment.
other questions? Okay, call the question. Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Gamble in opposition. Thank you. Okay, support services.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. Our item this morning is a joint item with Cobb DOT. On February 14th, 2007, the BOC authorized an RFQ to pre-qualify vendors capable of providing design, installation, and maintenance services for the county's enterprise video surveillance and access control system. In November of 2018, the board approved master agreements with 3 pre-qualified firms, Controlled Access, Inc., Convergent Technologies, and OnePath. The 3 pre-qualified vendors were asked to submit quotes to implement the county's enterprise access control system at DOT headquarters, Commerce Park, which includes public safety, Cobb Link, and paratransit, and the Cumberland Cobb Link facility. Controlled Access was the lowest responsive bidder. The cost of the project not to exceed $109,450. This agenda item also includes access and video controls and information services to prevent theft and provide security for county network and technology assets at a cost not to exceed $63,195. These costs include a 10% contingency to cover unexpected expenses. The installation of the Enterprise Access Control and Surveillance System is an eligible capital project program under the 2016 SPLOST. Facilities Improvement is an approved project to support services Facilities Improvement Work Program. We request the Board of Commissioners approve the 2 project agreements with Controlled Access, Inc., an amount not to exceed $109,450 for installation of the county's Enterprise Access Control System at DOT facilities, and $63,195 for installation of the county's Enterprise Access Control and Surveillance System within Information Services. Authorize the corresponding budget transactions, and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Ott.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion. Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Property management.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager. Property has 2 items. Our first is the new Public Safety Training Center. The Board of Commissioners approved a contract with John F. Pennebaker Company Incorporated in the amount of $2,842,240 for work related to the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system for the Public Safety Training Center located at 2435 East-West Connector, Austell, a 2016 SPLOST project. Authorize the correspondent budget transaction and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Cupid.
So moved.
I'll second. I have a
Discussion.
comment. I have a comment though.
Sure.
For those at home, I know several people are asking a question of where the project number was, because the project number was not given in the background of this. Just for their knowledge and information, the project number is included in the funding line. It's the X1050.
Yes, ma'am. We did have a meeting this morning with the deputy county manager and other agency heads and department heads to talk about that very issue, how to improve that for y'all.
Okay.
And it will be something to be brought back to y'all later.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. Our second item is Fire Station number 1. The Board of Commissioners approved supplemental agreement number 2 to the contract with John W. Spratlin and Son LLC in the amount of $193,550.69 for additional construction manager at risk services to build the replacement Fire Station 1, located at 5781 Mableton Parkway, Mableton. Approved procurement through the Purchasing Department of Furniture, Fixtures, and Equipment not to exceed $327,405.96 authorize the corresponding budget transaction, and further authorize the chairman to execute the necessary documents.
Commissioner Cupid,
So moved.
discussion? Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I know you were on your way back from California yesterday. Some of the things I brought up, and this really kind of applies to both 54 and 55. I had concerns about when we have projects that have multiple steps and spending agenda items, that the board and the public have an idea of, if we had X amount of dollars allocated for a certain project, where are we in that allocation of the dollars? And so part of the discussion we had yesterday was that on projects like the one in 54 and in 55, I'm going to work with property management as a liaison to come up with how to put it in the agenda item so that the board has a good idea of where we are running total wise, so that all of a sudden we don't have a building and then we have to come up with FF&E or furniture and equipment, and all of a sudden have to figure out where to come up with the money. So it's just going to be kind of how the agenda items are written. We do it in DOT already, and so we're going to kind of start doing it in property management things too.
So in essence, what we're doing is we're tying together the SPOS dollars with general fund dollars.
No, I mean, it's SPOS dollars, but what happens, like in DOT projects, if we'll have the design and engineering, then we'll have maybe some of the construction, or we'll have design build and things like that. And what we try to do is anytime we have a supplement agreement in DOT, we will list the entire project, the original agenda allocations, and then any supplemental or change orders, so that we have an idea of what the running total is, and compared to what the initial allocation or designation in SPOS was. And so I asked that we do the same thing in construction projects, so that we, kind of keep, because over time.
There is phasing, yes, sir.
Right, there are phases, and so it makes sense, instead of having to go back to the multiple agenda items, everything will be, every time a supplemental agreement or something comes forward, you can be able to see exactly where we are in that project.
But don't you also put out a monthly report that talks about where we are in a process, in a project?
Yes, and that's what we were just talking about with the Commissioner Gamble.
Okay.
Yes, because that's one of the conversations that I sent to county manager and then Scott and Eddie over the weekend, is if you go to the SPLOST and you put in the project for this specific project, and for those at home, this is X1021, it shows a budget of 3.3 million, but it shows no expenditures. But then it was brought to my attention, if I went over to finance, I could find the SPLOST reporting over there. But again, our users at home don't know to go to those two different locations to find those reports. So Scott and, oh, here comes Eddie, are going to be working to get that updated. You want to?
Yes, this morning we met with all the departments already at 8 o'clock to come up with a solution for that. And so we'll be presenting y'all with that in the next couple of weeks, but it'll do exactly what you said. It'll be one place for financials and one place to show the status of the projects. So it'll all be in one thing, so you don't have to go to a bunch of different areas to find that. So we're working on that.
Okay, I would also encourage you to make sure you stay in touch with the SPLOST Oversight Committee, because I know they put out a really detailed monthly report on all the projects, which is very impressive.
Exactly. It will all lead off of that monthly report, the information that will come to y'all also.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, part of the problem was, and it was identified in DOT, SPLOST has project numbers, but when DOT does a project, it gets a DOT project number. And when the agenda items have been coming in front of the board, they have been listing the DOT project number. And so there was some confusion.
That's exactly right.
And so what happened was, someone would look at an agenda item and say, you're using SPOS dollars. I can't find that project on the SPOS list. And so this whole discussion has gone, basically, other projects now have had similar situations, which is why we had the discussion yesterday.
Sure.
To put everything in one place so somebody understands that fire station number 1, this is the SPOS line item where it's coming from. It may say something different in the agenda item, but that's really kind of how it started in DOT.
That's exactly right. It's going to help it make it a whole lot simpler, and everybody be looking at the same information. It won't be a whole bunch of different things. When we went out there were 3 different financials out there that people could see. And so we're going to put that into one, and you'll see everything 2005, 2011, 2016, or 2016. All of it will be together, so you can all see one picture.
Commissioner Burrow.
Okay.
And we also discussed where you refer to the page in the SPLOST where the item is located to also include the total amount on this list, SPOS list? The
Okay,
total project amount,
sure, yes.
so that we don't have to go flipping
That's
through our
exactly right.
SPOS book to page number 152 to find what the item is.
That's right. All the information for you will be
It's
on
gonna be all on
one snapshot.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks.
It's unheard of. We're gonna make something simple in government? What's this world coming to here? Anyway, sorry, Scott. Didn't mean to take your thunder from me. Any other questions from the board? So we have a motion, right? And we have a second. Any other questions? I'll call a question then. Passes 5-0.
All right, thanks, sir.
Thanks, Scott. And the county manager's back.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman. Our last item for consideration by the board on the regular agenda this morning is to consider adopting Amendment Number 8 to the Cobb County Government Employees Pension Plan, as restated January 1, 2010, and to authorize a one-time non-cumulative payment in the amount of $1,475 to eligible full-time and part-time sworn and certified personnel. By way of very brief background, Mr. Chairman, as we discussed at previous board meetings when the board authorized one-time retention incentive payments to select folks in public safety capacities. There was a mention that the pension plan needed to be amended to specifically exclude these type of payments from income considerations that would count towards or be booked towards the pension. Following the required 60-day advertisement period where we let all of the pension benefit participants know that we were considering this particular amendment, we're now ready to move forward with actually amending the plan to specifically exclude those one-time payments from the pension calculations. Additionally, the staff was asked to come back and provide some guidelines for how the payment will be administered to eligible full-time and part-time personnel. And we have recommended to the board for its consideration employees in sworn certified classifications in the DA's office, fire department, police department, public safety, sheriff's office, and solicitor's office that have been employed continuously in their current eligible position since April 1, 2019, and have remained active through the pay period that ends on August 24th, would be those that would be eligible to receive the payment. We did also want to recommend that if there is an employee that has not had a satisfactory performance, we have asked the respective department heads or elected officials to notify appropriate personnel in the HR department as well as in the public safety agency in writing of that particular concern or lack of proper performance by August 16th, so that a decision may be made as to the payment either being extended or not given to the unsatisfactory performing employee.
So with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
And we have discussion. Okay, Commissioner Burrow.
Okay. This is just for the one-time retention bonus, correct?
The one-time retention incentive payment, yes, ma'am.
Okay, which is gonna be in the August pay period.
August 30, yes, ma'am.
Right. But this is just full-time. Only the salary increase, I thought, was for part-time. Are the part-time officers, sworn officers, getting the one-time bonus too?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I didn't think they were in the budget.
I believe they were included.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Well, my policy all along is I don't believe in part-time, full-time. They're just county employees. I never made the distinction. So to me, everybody should get the benefit.
Okay, so the
regardless.
amount that we approved in the budget covers both?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Commissioner Gamble.
And I'm with you, Commissioner Burrell. I didn't recall it being included either, because I think if it was, we would have made a delineation of what a full-time person would have gotten and a part-time person, because essentially the $1,475 for a part-time person is much more of an incentive than a full-time person, and I don't believe that was the purpose and intent behind this whole agenda item that's being brought forth.
Well,
This agenda item pertains to a retention bonus. It's to retain. So, I mean, differentiating it between full-time and part-time does not get to the premise of you're trying to retain that officer. Even in looking at the agenda item where you're looking at that officer's performance, is this a performance bonus or is this a retention bonus? Because to me, again, if the goal is to retain, addressing that officer's performance is a separate matter. This is, to me, as how it was interpreted to me and how as I'm reading this is purely a bonus to retain officers.
All right, I think everybody's missing the point here. This has already been voted on. The bonus, whatever you want to call it, whoever it's for, has already been voted on. This is simply to say that it is not pensionable. This agenda item, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but the problem is this discussion
I agree.
should have been had when it was voted on. But what's in front of the board right now is simply to say that the money does not count towards pension.
I would like to think that until you look at the last paragraph, which refers to performance, and again, it's getting back to this full-time, part-time. So, you know, originally I perceived it to be as such to strictly just to exclude from the pension, and that's how I perceived it. And so I took that explanation as it was yesterday, but now as, you know, we're going through this item today, I realized there seems to be more to this than what was, you know, addressed yesterday. And I have some concern about some of the additional things that seem to be associated with this agenda item. This seems to be strictly, as Commissioner Ott said, an agenda item to exclude from the pension, but this agenda item is not drafted. It's not drafted as such, nor is our communication seem to be reflected that that's what this is with respect to.
yeah,
And also, yeah, it's my understanding, whether it's full-time and part-time, that's okay. And we definitely don't want it to be, money taken out for the pension. And that's what we're looking at now. However, the 7% increase was based on the merit, if they met or exceeded their appraisal. Not the one-time retention, that was everybody across the board, if they were here during these
And Commissioner Burrow,
days.
if that's the intent, I think we can certainly clarify that. I think when the money was appropriated by the board, there was a request that there be some general guidelines as to how it would be administered. I think that we, as the staff, hearing the board's concerns about performance as it related to the merit discussion, we included this particular provision. In answer to Commissioner Cupid's question, it is indeed the sole purpose, Commissioner, is retention, as opposed to rewarding performance. So this may be a little bit of overkill on staff's point as far as the performance appraisal language that's listed at the end of the agenda item. But to answer your question, Commissioner, yes, ma'am, the sole reason was retention as opposed to performance.
I would be in support of this agenda item, striking that last paragraph, which seems to refer to the merit aspect of that discussion.
And again, I apologize. I think that was staff just trying to be mindful of a number of concerns that we
Sure,
heard. But we're
understandably.
certainly amenable to striking that language because indeed the purpose of the retention was retention when we offered the incentive.
Well, but also if we go back to the first purpose of this whole retention, it was for our first responders. It wasn't meant to include the DA and the solicitor. I mean, that was brought on after the fact. The whole basis of the 1475 calculation was based on just our first responders' contribution to that, not adding in the DA and the solicitor.
Yes, ma'am. I think the DA and the solicitor were added after the original.
But I mean, we weren't able to go back to address that with this item. But just with this, I mean, I'm just referring to this text of this particular item, with this being a pension-focused item based off of the retention bonus, that any reference to performance should not be included within this. It should just refer
Right.
to that.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree.
And again, I
but it
think
should
that
be
if
the
that might
time
have been a little
period.
overkill on staff's part, and we're certainly fine
But
with,
it should be the time period that they're here.
yes, ma'am.
That should stay. But, you know, when we were doing this, we agreed that there wouldn't be any commitment. That's just for the lateral transfers.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
this
We
is
may
for
have
our
been a
own.
little, we may have been a little too, we were trying to address concerns, but
well,
we may have gone a little
I'm in
overboard.
agreement to strike the performance part of it. And just a one-time bonus with not being
Well,
pension
to the
taken
pension,
out.
yes, ma'am.
So who made the motion?
I did.
Okay.
Can we provide a
Okay,
substitute
will you
motion?
amend?
So I'm gonna amend it so that we delete the requirement about about meeting the merit performance standards.
Well, I know, but it's in there. It's
So
written in
I'll make a
there.
motion, I amend my motion to delete the requirement to require
Second.
the,
Oh,
all right. I think it's also
I
important, I just want to go back to my military time, is that sometimes, we make fun of people that may not have the job skills of an infantry officer, and we used to talk about those, the cooks and bottle washers. But sometimes you're in a circumstance where those cooks and bottle washers, have to have a weapon to help you defend your position because you run out of infantry people. And that's where we are right now with our public safety. We're down to everybody has to man the positions because we have so few people, and we're doing everything we possibly can to incentivize them to stay. And I hope that this sends a signal that this is a big step. This is a one-time payment. Next year, if those are the number of positions that we have funded, and remember the reason we can do this year is that we simply couldn't find the people to fill the positions that we funded. And so we use that money for the incentive position here. But my ardent hope is that by all what we have done this year for public safety, the incentives, the agreeing to pick up the premium for the safety retirement plan, increasing their compensation, all of this will attract more people to fill these positions that we have funded, so we won't have to use this mechanism again in the future. I hope that's really what happens. But let's make no mistake about it. We're down here where we're hanging on by fingernails, trying to do the most important job in the county, which is provide public safety for all our citizens. And I know that our public safety officials appreciate what we're doing here, but the larger message should be is that we really want to attract people to this position because they perform an incredibly important service that is the most important responsibility of any government, which is to provide public safety for all their citizens. So any other discussion on this matter? With that, I call the question. Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Gamble in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right. I have one appointment to announce. Appointment of Esther Prieto to the Workforce Development Authority to fill a vacancy. And with that, I'll start with you, Commissioner Ott, on your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one, this is kind of an important one and kind of really important to the community. Next Monday night, August 19th, will be the community meeting about Sterigenics. Prior to the 7 o'clock start of the community meeting, there will be an open house from 5 o'clock until 6:45. All of this is at the Civic Center. During the open house, the citizens will be provided an opportunity to walk around and talk one-on-one with the staff from the different federal agencies that will be there. You also have an opportunity to submit your questions. Questions will not be taken from the floor during the community forum. They have to be submitted ahead of time. They can either be submitted then, or you can go to the county webpage And there is a link that you go to the Georgia EPD website to submit your questions, and they'll bring those questions with them on Monday night. So that's at the Civic Center, open house from 5 to 6:45, and then the community forum from 7 until 9.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burrow.
Yes. First, Commissioner, can you send that out to communications and to our newsletter so that we can?
Yeah, we'll make sure we send it out, and there is a single location on the county webpage that has all the information about Sterigenics and all the information, but Ross will get it to everybody.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I have some pictures here. Some more veterans have adopted forever homes for our dogs and cats at the animal shelter. The first one is Mr. and Mrs. Martin on the right here. Mr. Martin served in the U.S. Navy for 20 years. Thank you so very much for your sacrifices to ensure our freedoms. Mr. and Mrs. Martin adopted this handsome chocolate lab who is absolutely thrilled to have his forever home. Next, we have at the bottom left, Mr. Curry, a 4-year veteran of the U.S. Marines, and his family adopted this handsome little kitty. Thank you for your service, Mr. Curry. And on top, we have Mr. Greenwell, who is a 5-year veteran of the U.S. Army, and Otis, who's a 6-month-old chocolate lab. Thank you all for your service, and thank you to Superior Plumbing and Cobb County Animal Services for making this program possible. And I think we're up to 103 now, 104 now. So on August 27th at our night meeting, Jay Cunningham with Superior Plumbing will be here with another check for another 100. Well, we're into 4 of his next 100 adoptions available. So thank you to Superior Plumbing for your generosity and support. Also, a big thank you to our East Cobb Senior Center. We had a great time. The theme was medieval times, and we had Shakespeare came back, was resurrected and came back to talk to us. And it was a great event, as always, at the East Cobb Senior Center, celebrating their 24th year anniversary.
Where is your costume?
It's not. I don't do costumes. It's not Halloween yet. Okay. Also, thank you to Director Register, Chief Cox, and Chief Kreider for the Faith Forum last night. It was very well attended and a lot of good information. And we appreciate the relationships that you are building with the community. And congratulations to our canine team. If you didn't see Sunday's edition of the Marietta Daily Journal, they were front cover. It was a great article, and all 9 had their picture in the paper. And it was really a good article. It told about all the arrests they've made and search and seizures, and these dogs are hardworking. And I have to share the quote from Lester Maddox, who's over this unit, the canine unit. He said, if the dogs could talk and drive the car, they wouldn't need us. So I thought that was pretty clever. So also, I would like to congratulate our County Attorney, Deborah Dance. This is her last Board of Commissioners meeting. She is retiring and moving on. And we wish you all the best in your new endeavor. And I just want you to know that you've been a great representative of the county's interest in your tenure here, and a good friend, and we appreciate all you've done for us. Thank you. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you. I would like to remind everybody on Tuesdays from 4 to 7, we have the Farmers Market at Lost Mountain Park. But on August 20th, which is a week from today, they're going to have a Farmers Market Business Expo. So I would encourage everyone to come and see our local small businesses out in West Cobb from 4 to 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gabriel. Commissioner Cupid.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just want to say thank you to all the residents and particularly staff for your attendance and support of the first inaugural International Festival. It was very well attended, and I can say a great time was had by everyone who went there. And considering all that's going on nationally, and just it seems there's so much polarization or conflict, it was great to see people come together and have a good time. And recognizing Cobb County's diversity and seeing the good in that. So thank you, and thank you to staff who just went over and above to make that a very impressive event. And I hope that there's some way I can better recognize you for that. Again, it was just a lot of moving parts to pull that together, and you did it. So thank you again.
And Commissioner's been way too humble. She had a large part in the idea for that, and I want to commend you on that, Commissioner Cupid. It really was a fantastic day. And I hope that you left that day knowing that you created something here that will be long-lasting in the future of the county. So thank you for all that, and we're getting behind that. And I also want to join Commissioner Burl in saying thank you, Deborah, for all that you've done. Very difficult job, but you always stood your ground. Your integrity will be a legacy that will be part of your position here. And I always want to thank you personally for telling me straight. And that's what I ask for all of our staff, but I really appreciate you standing there and saying, this is black and this is white. And this is in the best interest of the county, and I think that this is the way we should go forward. So I really, really wish you all the best in your future endeavors. You're always welcome back here, and just want you to know that you leave with the thanks of this board, and wishing you all the best in your future. Okay. And before she cries, we're adjourned.
You sign this before you go out of
Sure,
town.
sure.
There's two.
Okay.
One is yours.